key thing about writing is that you need to know what you want to say, which sounds kind of self-evident, but in fact I'm not sure that it is. I think a lot of our school education and our undergraduate education gives us the sense that we should sit down and start drafting a text right from the beginning. Whereas in actual fact, we need to have spent quite a lot of time reading and writing our way into our text. We need to be reading the conversation around the phenomenon we want to write about, and we need to be writing a lot for ourselves to figure out what the heck we think before we try and draft something for someone else.
I think the advice I give to my postgraduate scholars when they are doing their research, or I'm doing my own writing for that matter, is you've got to make a start somewhere. So it's about just writing something, putting some ideas down, and then it's about regular, habitual approaches to writing. So you've got to write almost daily or keep the momentum going. If you don't, the job just gets too big and you just want to run from it.
Academic writing is one of the things that people struggle with, and I know I certainly struggled with it when I was writing my PhD. Because it's the idea that your piece of writing should come out in a particular way, so it looks like it's scholarly. And so the temptation is to rush into your thinking and writing in a way that's going to look like a scholarly thing that comes out of a book or an article. But the actual thing, what you need to do is actually think about it in draft form. So your first draft, literally thinking about your first draft, is you write it, the rule of thumb is write it as simply as possible.
Pre-writing, it's before you actually get to work out the argument and making your claims and finding the evidence to support your claims. But it's the writing you do that is writing for yourself. And I certainly in my own work don't do it enough. And then I end up relying on what other people are saying, and I lose my voice in the whole argument. So, yeah, I think it's really, really important to give oneself some time. So what I tend to do is if I'm fetching my daughter from school and getting irritated in the car, I pull out a notepad and just give myself 3-5 minutes, and I just write what I'm struggling with or the argument I'm trying to make. And I just write, and I write without stopping, and I don't worry about spelling errors or grammar or editing. And I find that useful, very useful in terms of working out what I need to say.
Research suggests that a lot of novice academic writers make the mistake of rushing to write the draft text and compound that with the mistake of editing from the very beginning. Research also shows that very proficient academic writers generally spend a lot of time on the process of writing. They seem to go through 3 overlapping phases of pre-writing, drafting, and editing. Pre-writing is very much writing for yourself without a concern of someone looking over your shoulder and seeing all your mistakes, your woody thinking, and your poor grammar. This is a time when you write freely about what you're reading, about the research you're doing, and try and work out for yourself what you want to argue. Only at later stages do you then try and craft it into an argument for a reader, and only then do you start worrying about coherence and finally about grammar, punctuation, and smooth reading. The question we need to ask ourselves is, are we spending enough time on the pre-writing, or are we making the error of rushing to drafting or even editing?
Find a time, and time management is very important. Find a time that would be the most suitable for you to be able to sit down and write. And you know, sometimes you just sit in a taxi and something crops up. So have something with you at all times.
I find that writing in my journal helps to offload any of these emotions. Once it's out on paper, I feel that I have more perspective. Reflecting on my journey and my progress, or lack thereof, serves as an impetus, and it also rejuvenates me to start writing.
My advice is take a little bit at a time when you're doing your PhD studies. A small step at a time will actually help you to achieve what you want.
Do Pomodoros?
Yes, techniques like Pomodoros, shut up and write,
where you block all negative disturbances and focus on writing. And you actually do make a lot of progress with regard to writing.
There are a lot of different techniques you can use to get yourself writing. You could try free writing, which is where you write non-stop for about 5 minutes on a topic of your choice. No editing, no searching for the perfect wording, just non-stop putting words down on paper. Or you could try the Pomodoro technique, which is a timed technique that forces you to turn off your phone, your email, your Facebook, and all other distractions to do focused writing in 25-minute blocks. Or you could try doing shut up and write sessions. These work especially well if there's a group of you busy writing together. There's nothing like a bit of positive peer pressure to help you focus.
Another reason that students find it so difficult is that there's always this voice of authority embedded in a text. That writer who they are reading is already an incredibly experienced scholar who's already mastered the discourse, who has the knowledge of the discipline as if they're breathing. So there's an insecurity in that, and it's very intimidating. So when you want to write about that, it's very hard to find words other than that they have already said in order to argue back at that. So it's hard to find a voice.
I think one of the best tools that I've come across in terms of improving my own writing has been a reading journal, which is really just a notebook in which I make notes for myself after every reading that I do. Partly it's the discipline of keeping all the bibliographic details in one place, but it's also a conversation I have with myself about what I've just read. And those rambling notes, which are for no one else's eyes and often not very coherent at all, are the space in which I figure out what that person's text means for me and my thinking and my study. And I think that translational device of the reading journal helps me to move from other people's voices in the text that I'm reading to starting to be able to write my own argument and draw on those texts to substantiate what I want to say, rather than falling into the trap of just paraphrasing what other people have said before me. All of these ideas, free writing, Pomodoros, reflective journals, reading journals, are about writing for yourself, freely, with no concern for audience or style, so that you can figure out what you think and what you want to argue before you shift to the second stage of writing, which is drafting your piece for an audience.
What is important is the conceptual work, the meaning making, the arguments, the claims, the golden thread. And often I sit trying to edit before I get the meaning and the coherence right. And I have to remind myself to stop and leave it and stop tinkering.
So perhaps it's time to stop telling yourself you can't write. Stop telling yourself it's too difficult. Stop trying to write perfectly from the start. It doesn't need to be perfect from the get-go. It needs to be written. So come on, no excuses, just write. This video is licensed under Creative Commons, so you do not need to seek permission to use, share, or adapt it.